You are now listening to
Chakras and Shotguns.
Welcome to Chakras and Shotguns, the podcast that guides you on a journey of spiritual development and personal preparedness. I'm Mik, a marketer, energy healer, and prepper.
And I'm Jenn, a former lawyer, now yoga instructor and tarot card reader.
So we're taught in school that trees are really important because they produce oxygen for us to breathe, as well as consume CO2, which helps to regulate the temperature of the atmosphere.
And it's hot.
Yes, it is. But really, that just covers the physical aspect of trees. In today's episode, we're going to dive into some additional aspects. How do trees affect us on a mental, emotional, and even spiritual level? We'll get into that and talk about why it's important for all of us to spend some time connecting with trees.
But before we get into that, if you're just listening, on your commute, and that's, what we used to do, that's fine or whatever. But you can also watch us and watch the episode. Like, I'm dressed like a highlighter today. Pink. You wouldn't know that unless you subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Yes, indeed.
So you can just search Chakras and Shotguns. We'll pop up. Now you can watch it with video if you would like. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun editing video and getting the lighting right. Working on my eyeshadow game, getting the beat going. So go ahead and subscribe.
All right. Well, let's begin as we always do with a breathwork exercise to put us in a mindful place.
All right.
All right, so I'll be leading today's breath work. If you can get into a comfortable seated position or even lay down if you feel so inclined. And just allow yourself to relax, close your eyes. You can place one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly if you like. And let's start by taking a couple of cleansing breaths. Take a deep inhale and exhale out of your mouth. Allowing yourself to settle into your space. One more in through your nose. And out through the mouth. Now allow yourself to visualize a beautiful scene in nature. A lush forest. And fill this forest with various trees in your mind's eye. As if you're building an imaginary world. And I want you to bring forth an image of a tree that really just draws you in. If you're familiar with the different species of trees, this could be your favorite tree. Or if you don't even know the exact name for the tree, just find one that has characteristics that speak to you. It could be more of a Christmas tree, coniferous type of tree with more needle leaves. Or a tree that has large, expansive leaves like a maple or oak. Just find the tree that speaks to you and resonates with your energy. Examine the tree. How tall is it? What is the bark like? What are the leaves like? Is there new growth? Bring all of this to mind. Now imagine the wind is rustling around this tree. What does that sound like? Imagine yourself touching this tree. What does the bark feel like? What is the energy you feel as you touch this tree? If you listen closely, does the tree speak to you at all? Take a moment to give the trees you're touching and all the trees that you've built in this mental forest, give them gratitude for their energy, for their role on this earth, for all that they do and provide. And remembering that you can always come back to this forest, always come back to this tree whenever you close your eyes and come back to the space. Say goodbye for now. And once again, give gratitude. Let's take a couple more deep breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. One more, in through the nose and out through the mouth. Give your hands and feet a little wiggle and slowly bring yourself back into the space. All right.
Thank you, Mik. Always a special treat when you do the breath work, visualization exercise. A couple of things. You threw coniferous in there. You know how I feel when...
My bad.
You know how it makes me feel when you use big words. You know, we're working.
I didn't mean to turn you on the podcast live. My bad, baby.
We're working right now. So keep that smut to yourself. Also, you said...
my freak.
Also, you said wiggle your toes, and my toes popped. So hopefully we cut that out in post. Okay. All right. So let's get into some tree hugging. Mm-hmm. And this is so funny because it made me think of a couple of things. Of course, it made me think about like hippies and like they're like, oh, you're a tree hugger. But also it made me think about I can talk about this. She's not going to listen.
Okay. Oh, yes. I know where you're going.
So my mom and I have, you know, as I've been exploring, you know, on my spiritual journey, et cetera, you know, my mom's a good Christian lady. I say that all the time. She happened to be sitting next to some lady on a plane, and that lady started talking to her about how she threw Catholicism in the trash and now she worships trees. And my mom called me very accusatory and was like, are you a tree worshiper now? Because of some lady on a random American flight told her that she don't believe in the priest no more. Yeah. And now she's a tree hugger. And I was like, well, girl, I do hug trees though. I do love a tree. I love taking myself to a place where I can feel the spirits of trees, meditating in trees. Yeah. We love a botanical garden, honey. Mm-hmm. But I was like, I mean, I'm not a member. Like, I don't go to the church of
the trees.
Of the trees. But yes, so I just feel like tree hugging, like growing up, like our parents who grew up in the 60s and the 70s and then had us, and then like the language, like it was really propaganda, really, like the language around tree huggers was so nasty, so rude, so mean. So it had this like interesting connotation to it.
Yeah, it's very interesting to me how tree hugger became something that as a society, or like a mainstream society, I should say, we like denigrated. Like it was like a negative term. You're a tree hugger, you know what I mean? But I think in a lot of ways, and I don't know if this is historically accurate or not, but I remember hearing stories of activists who were trying to stop deforestation. They would chain themselves to trees and they would try to prevent these loggers from cutting down trees. And so it was an act of environmental resistance, right? And we got the message from capitalism, from the capitalists, that it was bad to try to stop that from happening, right? Trying to stop industry from destroying forests. So you were a tree hugger because you're in my way. Like it's kind of
you're in my way of destruction.
Exactly. So I don't know if that's historically accurate, but that's like as you were talking, kind of what popped into my head. Anyway, for this episode, what I wanted to talk about is how tree hugging actually didn't start with the hippies and didn't start with these environmental activists. There's actually a long history of tree reverence throughout history. And so a couple of societies that I wanted to point out, Celtic and Druidic traditions, they honored trees. They believed that each tree was inhabited by spirits who were willing to share their healing powers with us. The Celts, they actually organized trees into a tree calendar. So each month had a specific tree associated with it and a certain medicine that was attributed to that specific tree. And so there's a book that I read called The Healing Power of Trees by Charlene maybe Hidalgo that goes into a lot of detail about this. So if you're interested, check it out. We'll add that to the reading list. I don't know if it's already on the reading list or not.
I don't think so. We might be due for an update.
Yeah, we can add that. But yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about some of the tree energies a little bit later in this episode. I also wanted to call out another community. So this is in line with kind of what we were talking about, what I was just talking about with like kind of stopping deforestation. But there was this Bishnoi community in India. And about in 1730, 363 members of that community, they hugged trees to prevent them from being cut down for a palace project that was being built. So, kind of similar vibes that we saw with the hippie movement where they were
rich
trying
people going rich.
So yeah, their kind of sacrifice that they did, that led to a royal decree that protected the trees in their villages, which really was kind of like the early forms of environmental protection. So yeah, that's some of the early things. And as we already talked about, there's obviously that environmental movement that's continued on, that kind of started in like the 50s and 60s that we continue to see today.
One, I love to see a protest gone right and people being like, okay, my bad. We'll protect the trees. Because do we really need another palace? No. Second, in the spirit of deconditioning, the propaganda around environmental activists was crazy growing up. I don't think I was well into adulthood where it was like climate change started becoming a real conversation. And it was like, no, y'all, like we about to be burnt up to a crisp if we don't like stop pollution and all of these things. I remember growing up, they were like, oh, those environmentalists, like I feel like in certain movies and stuff, they would make them the bad guy.
Yeah, exactly.
That they were trying to save the earth. I mean, I think Poison Ivy kind of was an environmentalist, right?
And then you had the billionaire dressing up in a suit stopping her.
Women in tech. You see what I'm saying? Are you picking up what I'm putting down? I don't know. A woman's trying to save some shit and a billionaire vigilante who could be using his money. Like he could actually be funding, I don't know, let's work on the school to prison pipeline or, making sure people can eat so they don't have to steal.
Climate change.
He's helped. A freaking billionaire. And he's like, you know what? I want to fight crime myself. Stupid, silly, goofy. Very Republican coded. But that's neither here nor there.
Would Bruce Wayne have spoke at the RNC?
Probably, because he needed the tax cut so he could get a new Batmobile. Because how else are we going? Like, Joker needed mental health care. Like, it's mental. Like, he needed health and wellness. Okay?
Arkham was overcrowded. Anyway.
He needed EMDR therapy. Okay? We needed resources.
On a more serious note, I wanted to speak on something. So I went to this conference. It's not really a conference. It's more like a gathering.
Okay.
Called Aniwa. You know about this, right? And so they brought in over 50 indigenous elders to Big Bear, which is a few hours outside of LA. And I got to attend this. And basically, it was 3 days of programming where individual elders would hold sessions on different topics. And one of the commonalities that I noticed is that regardless of the culture, whether it was the samurai culture, whether it was Hawaiian culture, whether it was indigenous folks in South America or Mexico, or even here in North America, or here in U.S., because I guess Mexico is part of North America. But all across those cultures, there was a belief in kind of spirits all around us, right? And so this animism of like even trees or rocks or mountains or whatever having spirits. And so the fact that that idea was kind of all around the world, and, you know, I called out the Celts and the Druids here, but I wanted to also just note that, you know, there were so many different cultures who also had this same idea, and it was prevalent when I was at this gathering. So they talked a lot about trees and pretty much everything, and how important it is to honor the spirits that inhabit all of these. So as we talk about tree hugging, I want to provide that additional context.
Yeah. And we have this conversation all the time. And we were having this conversation this morning where I've started to say, like, we talked about the book of Watering the Spirit a million times. I was telling Mik a couple of stories about other things that I had seen online. And this, I call it like 5D goggles or like 5D glasses of just, there's these indigenous cultures. There are always indigenous traditions, right? For the most part. You also see it in Haiti a lot of like, they somehow perceive other layers to this tangible world that we're in that we're not seeing, you know, where they're seeing the spirits that are living in these trees, like they're tapped in, like they have the glasses on. And so it's just this connection with nature that is so fascinating to me. And almost I get a little melancholy about it sometime, about how far removed we've come from, where we're just, it's a resource. It's something to be trampled on. It's something to be, to move past. Like being in nature is a hobby. That's, you like to camp? Like that's a hobby versus coming back to like factory settings. Right?
I'm trying to remember the name of the book. We've talked about it before, but even from looking at the Bible, right? There's this book that talks about how the 5D goggles were prevalent at the time that the biblical text was being written. And so there's like so much in the context of the text that we don't quite understand, because we're missing that perspective that people who were alive then had with regard to supernatural, you know, 5D things, what that we call now in New Age 5D, whatever. But these supernatural instances, whether it's contact with beings like angels, right? Like that was more readily accepted and a more prevalent part of society than it is now. Exactly. And so we are unable to kind of fully understand the Bible because we don't have that same lens.
Open your third eye, fam.
Exactly.
Okay, let's get back to these trees, though.
Yeah.
So are there any benefits from spending time with trees? Just being around a tree. We found 2 studies. One is in the Journal of Environmental Psychology. That's cool. And one in the Journal of Preventive Medicine. And they both looked at forest bathing, which is basically spending time among trees. Do you have to be naked to forest bathe?
No, I think you just keep it close.
She a fan.
She's like, is it required?
Is it optional? I'm just kidding. So anyways, let's get back to the task in hand and stop being freaky. Both studies showed that spending time in the forest for a significant period of time, which is 3 days in one of the studies. So, you know, you're not just popping out to like the local park for 20 minutes. It resulted in significantly lower blood pressure and an increase in immune response, which, gosh, I'm so fascinated with like the immune response and like its impact on survival, and that if we're over triggering it, what are the other things that we're, you know what I mean? Like all the things that we're basically messing up in our body because we're in fight or flight, and then our immune response goes down, and now we're getting sick all the time, or we're not sleeping well. So just going camping, I guess, being among some trees for 3 days, that's a long weekend.
And look, how many of us got a big mama that's on birth control medication?
Birth control?
Sorry. Blood pressure medication.
If my big mama's on birth control, we got problems.
Damn, I said that all wrong. There might be a big mama on birth control.
Well, the grandmama is the baby, you know?
Exactly. Forgive me, y'all. All we got to do is take it out to the forest, it sounds like.
Yes.
Take on a little camping trip, get into some trees.
Mm-hmm.
My mama don't like being outside. We need to fix that.
Yeah.
Get out here into some trees.
Over here, swap out that hypertension medication.
I also want to note that the participants in that study also showed that they had increased mood and lower anxiety. And I know a lot of folks, especially in our generation, are suffering from high anxiety.
Baby, it's anxious times.
We tired of living in unprecedented times.
Get off the internet and touch grass. People are like, oh, that's so offensive when you tell people to touch grass.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to help with your anxiety.
That's like scientifically backed studies. There are more than just those two that we highlighted. So feel free to kind of let your Google fingers fly if you need to. I want to talk a little bit about some of the energy of trees. So there's different cultures, like I mentioned already, the Celtics, the Norse, Native Hawaiians, and Hindus, to name a few, that have concepts around kind of specific trees and their spiritual energy. So some of the examples, the oak tree, right? Big, strong oak tree. They are considered to have the energy of strength, stability, and wisdom. We had that big oak tree in our front yard in Dallas. I kind of felt that energy every time I would interact with that tree. There's also the willow tree, and that has the energy of healing and sorrow. So like weeping willow, you ever heard that, right? With the moss kind of hanging from it. The birch tree has the energy of protection and new beginnings. The cypress tree, mourning and grief. The alder tree, guidance. The redwood tree also is another one that is considered one for strength and kind of growth because of how tall they are.
Okay.
And then the cedar tree is also another one that I've heard of referred to as being strong as well. People talk about having a good cedar wood furniture. At least my dad would talk about that. That's a good cedar chest over there, Okay,
speaking of, because I was about to pop quiz.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to pop out. I don't know if you know this or not, but do you think that in rituals, incorporating the wood of those certain trees, like, is that a thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'll add to that. So there are certain cultures that will smudge with specific woods for that reason, right? So in one of the sessions that I attended at the Aniwa, she worked with, I think it was cedar actually. That was one of the woods that she would use to smudge with for clearing energy. So yes, for ritual purposes, you can work with certain woods and burn them for their properties.
Okay. Yeah, so if you don't remember these specific trees, you were like, Mik's reading his list. That's cute or whatever. You don't know how to identify them. You didn't do the 9th grade leaf identifying project like I did. Yeah. Just start with what's around you. And Google's your friend. Mm-hmm. They got all kinds of apps.
Yeah, I have an app that helps me.
Of course you do.
Yeah. It's been weird. Like, I think since this spiritual awakening, I started down this path of like being able to identify trees and even birds in some ways. We talked about the birds a little bit before, but like I didn't have this knowledge like growing up. Like this wasn't something I learned like as a teenager or in high school or anything. Like it's just been like I got this new encyclopedia in my head where I could just like
I thought you were getting your associates or something while I was asleep. I was like, why does he know all these birds? He's a birder. He's a birder.
Oh man.
But just start with what's around you. Use an app or whatever. Yeah. We had a tree in our backyard, in our home in Dallas.
Yeah, you know what it was. It was an elm.
Oh, okay.
We had elms on both sides. It was elms on both sides of the house and in the backyard, and then an oak in the front yard.
I remember the oak in the front. Thank you.
Yeah.
What's the elm for?
I don't actually remember what the energy of the elm was, but
you didn't have the encyclopedia.
Well, I don't have the spiritual meanings of every tree associated with the tree, but I can identify the tree. My bad.
We'll look it up later. But yeah, we just felt this connection to this tree, especially like as we were on our spiritual journey.
Yeah.
I think even before that, when we bought the house, I was just like, these trees are so beautiful. And never owning a house before, we didn't know that these trees are so expensive to maintain.
Yeah, if you want to maintain them the right way, especially in a place like Dallas where we get tornadoes and storms and trees will fall over, like you kind of have to like make sure you're getting them trimmed properly. And it would be
stacks, racks.
Yeah, we would spend like over $1,000 to like take care of all the trees around us. And
it's about that time. We got to get the trees cut back. I'm like, oh God.
They was on my ass too. It's time to get your trees trimmed. I'm like, I ain't got it right now.
Yeah, so we felt connections to the trees that we had. You know, we had also paid a lot of money. So we had financial connection, spiritual connection, emotional. But we were going on the spiritual journey. It's COVID. We're inside, you know, or not around people at least.
Yeah.
Our only child at the time was a toddler. So we would take her outside a lot and like touch the tree and talk to the tree and hug the tree and tell the tree it's beautiful.
Your mama was right.
I am a tree hugger. Well, she also was like, I think she came over one day and our oldest was like, let's go outside and touch the tree. And my mom was like, does she know the Lord's Prayer?
No, but I'll just say that was there was this specific elm that she's talking about is one that I really connected with strongly, like as I was kind of going down this path of shamanism. And I could almost, in a lot of ways, I mean, I could hear and communicate with it. I remember we were doing some work on like our driveway, which kind of curved around through our backyard. And I was like worried that it was going to somehow disturb the roots. And I was like, you know, talking to the tree, like, you know, telling it what was happening, you know what I mean? Because I just felt like this emotional connection to it that went beyond just like, oh, I care for this tree, was like something deeper, something spiritual.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's just been interesting.
Yeah, I did walk a lot to that when I was in labor with our oldest. I forgot about that. I was walking around in the backyard.
Yeah.
And I remember walking like back and forth to that tree.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting because that was spiritual awakening kind of.
Yeah.
But that tree was there for that.
Absolutely.
Also, I talked about botanical gardens earlier.
Yeah.
And this made me think about that was not the last. The last time us as a family were at a botanical garden was in Santa Barbara. We took a little trip to Santa Barbara like last fall. And this was not what we expected, but it was what we needed.
Yeah.
It felt more like just like you paying at a gate and popping into a forest. It's kind of really what it felt like.
It was a massive botanical garden.
Yeah. And I've been like so enamored, fascinated by redwoods since we've moved here, and they had redwood trees there. And there's also a lesson in here because, you know, we had the kids with us or whatever, and I was just getting caught up in like the spirits of these trees. And not like I was about to get swept away or whatever and become Fern Gully, but if you know, you know. But more so like I just really wanted to spend time with these trees. Like it was just, they were so majestic. And the lesson in that is I would like rush back and Mik will be like, I got the kids, like have your experience. And I think the lesson of having 5D goggles or being more connected with nature or being more tapped into your spirituality is that you can't rush it. And what that looks like is, you know, do your 5-minute meditation if you just need to get your meditation in for the day. But sometimes you need to just sit in silence for a very long period of time or bathe in the forest for 3 days. Or, you know, you really have to set aside time to really find that type of experience. And so I appreciate you for not rushing me, but I was still rushing myself because I wanted to have lunch. But that's...
Yeah, I thought it was really cool just watching you. I kind of stood back a little bit and kind of watched you as you kind of just were kind of gliding amongst the trees and kind of touching them. And like I could tell you were really connecting with them in a way I hadn't seen you before. So that was really cool. It kind of reminds me, though, of an experience that I had. So there was a a plant medicine ceremony that I was helping to facilitate in my role as a shaman. And I took like a microdose, which sometimes I will do to kind of help put me on that same frequency as well. And we were in this like backyard, and there was this massive magnolia tree in the backyard. And as I was kind of laying there, I looked over at the tree, and I just felt like this call, like it was like wanting to tell me something, you know? And so I went over to it and kind of just sat with it for a while. And the message that I got was that it was lonely, essentially. And because of how the backyard was set up, it was kind of sitting in kind of like one of those, like a planter. Like it's like there are bricks that are kind of around it, and that kind of cover up the roots. And so it's not really like any exposed soil around the tree. It looks great, right? Like it's like a decorative thing. So you have more of a deck and whatnot. But what that prevented the tree from doing is dropping its seeds into the soil, which would allow it to then have offspring that would grow near it, right? Because if there's no exposed soil, there's nowhere for these saplings to kind of come up out of the ground. And so, yeah, it was talking about just, it was lonely. It wanted to procreate, wanted to move, wanted to like experience that movement. And so I told the owners of the home about that. And it's funny, they're actually planning to move. And so they were like, oh, we can take, you know, a seed or a sapling. And there was actually one little sapling that was growing out of a crack in the sidewalk. And they're like, we can take that with us and like allow this tree to kind of experience through its offspring moving and being in different locations. So yeah, that was a really cool conversation that I had with the magnolia tree.
Was the sapling there when you were there, or did they tell you later about the new sapling?
No, I showed it to them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And they weren't aware of it.
Yeah, they weren't aware of it. So, yeah.
Trees, they're just like us, guys.
Yeah.
They want to have kids.
Yeah.
They want to see the sights.
They do.
They want to book flights, not catch feelings. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. As you say that, like, it reminds me of in this book, Braiding Sweetgrass, which is really popular right now, and we'll link it in the show notes if you haven't heard of it. But this book, it essentially follows, the author is from an indigenous tribe, and she talks about a lot of the lessons that she learned from various elders in her tribe. And in the language that they use, they actually refer to trees as he or she, as opposed to how in English we use the word it. Mm-hmm. And she talked about what that does in terms of how we as English speakers perceive trees. Like when you label it an it, it loses the ability to kind of have its own persona. Mm-hmm. But when you have those pronouns of he, she for trees and plants, it reminds us of the shared kind of spirit energy that we have, right? Like they're inhabited by a spirit the same as we are, right?
Yeah. And
so, yeah, I think I have tried to subconsciously change my language to like kind of incorporate, like when I talk about a tree, like he or she, like when I'm talking about my plant babies right here, like, oh, she needs water, as opposed to it needs to be watered, right? Like, yeah, you know, I think that helps to, just kind of change the mindset when it comes to how we view trees.
And we're talking about everything living, right? Everything living that's non-human.
Yes.
Because, you know, some people be talking to their cars. And I mean, come on, girl. And I'd be like, you know, if you do that, you know, that's your ministry. You know, I'm very like, if you're not hurting yourself or others, do what you want to do. I just.
But wouldn't a car have a spirit too, though?
I'm not there yet. I'm on the journey. I'm just hugging the tree. I'm just hugging the tree. Okay. All right. So we're at the portion of the episode. It's not like a real segment or anything. I just realized that we're about to talk about how chronically online we are. Yeah. And so I have a video that I want to talk about trees. Okay. And I know you have a video you want to talk about trees. Yeah. So the video that I saw was this woman, and I think multiple people were doing it. We're kind of doing this experiment where you stand under a tree, and the tree had to have a branch. Basically, it couldn't be a tree that like the branch couldn't reach down, but the branch couldn't already be touching you. Mm-hmm. And so this woman was standing under this tree, and she was like, you know, I think she might have had her hand on it, but she was like, hi, like, can you say hello? And you watch this branch like come and like touch her on her shoulder. And of course people could be like, this is a hoax, this is fake news, whatever. But like, isn't it cool that you could connect to something like that? And it's like, thank you for acknowledging me. Like,
yeah, that's really cool.
I'm alive.
Yeah. So the video I saw, and I'll find the creator and I will tag her in the show notes. I don't have it readily available, but she basically talks about her connection with trees and how she communicates with them. And what I thought was really interesting was that she talks about what happens when trees die. And she said they either will leave, their spirit will leave either through the roots or out through the leaves. And so she was suggesting that, like, if you need to cut down a tree or, you know, disturb it in some way that would potentially kill it, you should let the tree know a few days in advance so that it can kind of decide where it wants to go. If it wants to go up through the leaves or down through the roots. And I was like, she sounds real crazy. But then I was like, oh, but I be talking to trees too. So am I just crazy too? But then I was like, I don't know. She like goes and talks to them every day. I'm more like a pen pal with mine. So I don't know, that made me feel a little bit better.
I got a plan for when I die.
Well, that's fair.
And I want to be a tree.
I
thought that, so I heard about this a long time ago and I was like, oh, that sounds really cool. And then the more I was on my spiritual journey, I was like, no, that's exactly what I want to do. However, I was misinformed as to what it looked like. So I was under the impression that they take your dead body and they put you in this biodegradable pod. And like, as your body decomposes, and they plant it. And as your body decomposes, it like stimulates the pod or everything, all the gabagoo. And it becomes a tree. Now, that's crazy in hindsight that like I'm curled up like a little, I'm curled up in the fetal position with hopefully my old ass.
And your bones are just getting all crunched up by the roots.
So what they really do is you're cremated and then they put you in like a little pod and together you do grow into a tree. And so I think that's really beautiful. I find caskets to be a really weird, like, especially like they're all shiny and shit, and we're like burying it in a graveyard, and all of that's like decomposing. I just feel like I don't need to be in some like plush box. I would much prefer, and it feels very useful and very cyclical, right? For me, like of death and rebirth. And then like my kids and grandkids and great grandkids can come visit me as this tree. Hopefully I have a tree boo next to me.
I mean, I'm trying to be next to you. I already told you that, you know what I mean? I want to be an oak though. Put the oak tree seed in my joint. But
I need people to be protective of where I am, because if they cut me down to make paper for people to write some bullshit on, what if they cut me down and make toilet paper out of my tree?
Not that. That would be wild.
Wow. Think about that. When you're using toilet paper, is that somebody's grandma?
I think it's time for us to wrap this episode up.
So to recap, trees have energy. They can help you physically be healthier, help you with anxiety. There's a lot of energy and a lot of magic in trees. So, you know, just think about that. Next time you're at the park or you're just sitting outside under your favorite tree, maybe try and connect, maybe try and tap in.
All right, guys, that's the show. Friendly reminder. Go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can see us in living color and get the full effects of the show.
All right. And if you're loving the show, please subscribe and give us 5 stars wherever you listen or watch.
Namaste.